I don't know if you've ever read this book in the Bible, but there is a book in the Bible called the Song of Solomon. And the first time I read it, I was like, how did that get in there? Like, I mean, it's real. I mean, it's kind of intense, actually, whenever you read it. I mean, it's got some real discussion about sex. It is unlike any other book of the Bible. And I want to give you a little bit of context about this book before we jump in. And so the Song of Solomon was written somewhere around 965 BC. Not exactly sure when it was written, but we think sometime around 965 BC. That's about 1,000 years before the birth of Christ. And basically, there are two ways that you can read this book or study this book. Now, the first way is a way that a lot of the early church fathers read this book, was they saw it as kind of an allegory or a metaphor of Christ's love for the church. That's how they read it, as an allegory. And the other more common way to read this book, and the way that we're going to read and study this particular book in the Bible, is that it's an interaction, a love story between a man and a woman. And that's how we're going to interpret this particular book here at Grace Vineyard Church, is as a love story between a man and woman. And we are going to look as this couple passionately pursues one another, cherishes one another, and loves one another. I'm really excited. And my hope is that in this series, we would learn. If you're already married, you would develop qualities that enable you to have a thriving, flourishing marriage for the long haul. And if you're not married, my hope is that you would begin to develop qualities that would make you a marryable kind of person, right? And then also give you what some good qualities to look for in another person. So today we're going to begin the series, and we are going to talk about attraction. Attraction. We're going to talk about faithful attraction. And if you're here, like I said, if you're not yet married, these are the qualities that you want to build in yourself to make yourself attractive to another person. They're also the things that you want to look for when it comes to attraction. I'm talking about godly attraction. And if you're already married, these are the qualities you want to continue to cultivate so that your marriage stays strong for the long haul. Now, speaking of attraction, we live in a new age when it comes to dating, right? We've got online dating. We've got dating apps. I don't know if anybody's ever experienced these things before. We live in an age of online dating. It is a totally different world. Now, anybody that's ever been on one of these websites before, I'm going to just go on ahead and say, maybe you've had the experience before where somebody has sort of tried to portray themselves in a way that wasn't altogether true in order to attract you, right? Has anybody ever experienced that, where somebody stretches the truth just a little bit on an online dating site just to hopefully try to make themselves seem a little bit more attractive? I mean, that's what happens on these sites oftentimes. For example, if you read and a woman says, "I'm 40-ish" on one of these sites, translation, what that means is I'm 49 and a half and I'm looking for a younger guy. Okay, that's usually, not always, it may not always be that way, but a lot of times that's what they're saying. Or if a guy says, "I'm really laid back and I'm close to my family and I, we're really tight," what that means is he lives in his mom's basement, and he probably hopes that you have a better job so that you can kind of support both of you guys whenever, hopefully, one day you guys hook up and get married. Or if a woman says, "I'm bubbly and I'm fun," not always, but chances are that could mean that she is going to talk your ear off, and she is just not going to stop talking. I mean, it's going to be all her at the date. That's just how it's going to go. Or if a woman says, "I am an independent woman," it may not always be this way, but sometimes it means she's got control issues and she wants to dominate you and have you like it, okay? Doesn't always mean that. But a lot of times people will stretch the truth a little bit about themselves in order to make themselves appear a little bit more attractive. But what I want to do in this series is I want to look at some of the qualities that make a person attractive from a godly perspective, okay? And I want to look at 4 qualities that I think we see here in the Song of Solomon. And so if you have your Bibles, you can open up to the Song of Solomon. We're going to be in chapter 1, beginning verses 2 through 4. And if you're taking notes today, the first thing that we see in this particular chapter of Scripture, the first quality or attribute that makes a person attractive from a godly perspective is godly character. It all starts with godly character. The most important quality that any of us should ever try to look for in a future spouse or should try to cultivate in our own lives to be more attractive to our existing spouse is godly character. Song of Solomon, chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. Here's what it says. The woman is speaking, and she says, "Let him kiss me with the kisses of my mouth, for your love is more delightful than wine. Pleasing is the fragrance of your perfumes. Your name," this is the part I want to kind of zero in on, "your name is like perfume poured out. No wonder the young women love you." Translation, what is she talking about here? Your name is like perfume poured out. What she's saying right here is perfume back in those days, back in that context, perfume was very expensive. Not everybody had perfume. It was very costly, and it made a person more presentable when they went out, and it was very, very valuable and expensive. And she says, your name is like this expensive thing. It's like your name is like perfume poured out. It's rare. It's expensive. In other words, what she's saying is you have solid character. You have strong character. You have godly character. Now, what is godly character? Well, godly character is who you are when nobody else is looking. It's how you treat your kids. It's how you treat your spouse. It's how you treat your employees. It's how you treat the person who's waiting on you. Godly character is how you act when nobody else is looking. And notice here that the reason that she was attracted to him was because his name was good. He had a solid name. He had good character. She says, it's no wonder the other women love you because you've got a great name. Your character is solid. The very first thing that we should look for if you're single and you're looking for a potential spouse that should attract you, the first thing you should look for is godly character. Now, every once in a while, I'll hear someone say, and it's usually a woman, but sometimes I'll hear a guy say this too. Every once in a while, I'll hear someone come up to me and they'll say, you know, I don't understand what's going on. It seems like I just attract one kind of guy. It's like they're only after one thing and one thing only. I don't get what's going on. It's like all the men that come into my life, they're always looking for the wrong thing. And respectfully, I usually respond by saying, if you're always attracting the same kind of person, then perhaps you should look at what you're putting out there and what kind of bait you're using. I mean, if you're out on 6th Street twerking until the late hours of the night and you're only getting guys who are after one thing, I mean, come on, you know? We've got to take a look at what kind of bait we're using. If you're only getting one type of fish, you got to look at your approach because we tend to attract whatever it is we put out there. And here's what I would say. Is I promise you, if you begin to put Jesus number one in every aspect of your life, if you begin to search after Jesus, to follow Jesus, to put him first in everything you do, it absolutely will impact every other aspect of your life. It'll impact the way you dress. It'll impact the places you go. It'll impact the people you hang out with. And I guarantee you that when you begin to put Jesus first and pursue godly character above all other things in life, ungodly people who are only after one thing, they're not going to want to have anything to do with you. It's all about what you're putting out there. You tend to attract whatever it is you put out there. And I would argue all day long that a healthy marriage, a great marriage, is not about finding the right person. That's not what it's about. Having a healthy, strong, good marriage is about becoming the right person. It's not about just finding the right person. It's about becoming the right person. And when you become godly and you seek godly character above all other things, then you're going to attract godly people. But it starts with character. Pursuing Jesus above all other things, including a spouse, and everything will work out. It starts with character. The second quality that we see in this relationship is what I would call trust or growing trust. Here's what the woman says in verses 5 and 6. She says, dark I am, yet lovely. Daughters of Jerusalem, dark like the tents of Kedar, like the tents of Solomon. Do not stare at me because I am dark. Do not stare at me because I'm dark. Are you guys picking up? There's a little bit of insecurity in her voice. She says, because I am darkened by the sun, my mother's sons were angry with me and made me take care of the vineyards. My own vineyard I had to neglect. See, she's insecure about her appearance. And a little bit of the context here. See, in our culture today, to be tan is actually attractive, right? I mean, if we're like really white, like we'll go spend a lot of money on tanning booths and stuff like that, because to be kind of tan is sort of considered to be attractive in our culture. But back in those days, to be tan was not an attractive feature. If you were tan, that meant that you had to work a hard job. It meant that you had to work outside. It meant that you had to work in the vineyards. You had hard work that you had to do. And so what she's saying is she's insecure. She's saying, don't look at me. Don't pay attention to my skin because I am dark, because I'm darkened by the sun. She's opening up about her insecurities. She's insecure. Now, most of us, if we were really honest, would probably admit that we all have an insecurity about our bodies, something physical, right? I mean, most of us would agree that there's something physically that we're insecure about. Either I need to shed a few pounds, or I wish I wasn't so hairy, or I wish that my hair wasn't going away, or I wish, there's always something, some physical insecurity that we all have. And so I remember when I first met Sarah, I had this huge insecurity, all right? And it goes all the way back to when I was in 4th grade, and I was standing in line, and there was this girl that I really, really loved, and didn't love, but I really liked her. I was in 4th grade, and we were in line, in the lunch line, and I remember her turning around and looking at me, and she said, "Scott, man, I think you are so cute. The only problem is just, man, those eyebrows. Like, those eyebrows." She's like, I don't know. Your eyebrows are really big and bushy and hairy. And she was like, I would go out with you, but your eyebrows are really ugly. 4th grade, I was crushed. I'm talking crushed. All the way into my teenage years. I was so insecure about my eyebrows. If I really liked a girl and I really thought she was attractive, I had a hard time even looking her in the eye because I was so crushed and I had this insecurity about my eyebrows. It was really, really rough. But so I meet Sarah, and we start dating and we start going out. And I remember opening up to her and just saying, but these eyebrows, though, I know, I think you're amazing, but what about my eyebrow? I opened up to her about an insecurity with my eyebrows, all right? And you know what she said to me? She said, I didn't even know. She said, I love your eyebrows. She's like, I like your bushy eyebrows. I think your eyebrows are rugged. They're manly. I wouldn't want you to have any other kind of eyebrows. I want some manly eyebrows on my man. And I was like, that's right. I put my chest out. I was like, look, I've got manly eyebrows. That's right. I've got rugged eyebrows. And you know what? That completely crushed that insecurity that I had about that. It completely changed my life. That insecurity went away. I opened up to her with my physical insecurity, and she totally crushed it. She totally encouraged me. She totally built up trust. And that might sound cheesy. You might laugh, but I think we all have moments like that where we open up about our insecurities. And one of the ways that I knew that Sarah was the one for me was that I could open up about the things that I was insecure about. And she loved me through it. And here's what I want to say. If you're dating, and if you open up about an insecurity to somebody you're dating, and if they make you feel worse about it instead of feel better, then you need to run from that relationship. It's not a healthy relationship. Because one of the signs of a good, healthy relationship is that you can open up about your insecurities, and they will love you through those insecurities. That's what we're going to see in this particular passage. So those are the first two things when it comes to godly attraction. It's character and growing trust. The third quality that we want to build in ourselves and that we want to look for in a potential spouse, so powerful. Verse 7, read this. It says, "Tell me, you whom I love," this is the girl speaking, "where you graze your flock and where you rest your sheep at midday." Now I want to pay attention to this next verse right here. She says, "Why should I be like a veiled woman beside the flocks of your friends?" Translation, what is she saying here? Well, the veiled women that she's speaking of in those days, they had a reputation, okay? The veiled women who hung out by the flocks, they had a reputation of giving themselves up for a price, if you know what I mean. And so she's saying, you know what? I'm not going to be like one of those women. I'm going to have higher standards. She's establishing that she has higher standards, different standards. And what I'm about to say today, it might seem a little bit archaic. You might say, how on earth is this 32-year-old pastor preaching about this in Austin, Texas in 2016? I can't believe that he's about to say what he's about to say, but I will stand beside it because I believe that it is a teaching of Scripture, and I believe that it is the order that God has established for us. But when it comes to sex, when it comes to a sexual relationship with another person, God has created an order for what sex should be. And it's between one man and one woman. One man, one woman. And it's supposed to be in the context of marriage. That is the order that God has established when it comes to sex. Now, anything within that circle, within the context of marriage between one man and one woman is great. That's awesome. But when you start to break outside of that context, that's where things get a little bit hairy. That's where we get out of order. And everybody else in the world, they may say, hey, you know what? We're cool with having sex while we're dating, but we all have a choice to make when it comes to getting into a relationship with another person. And those two choices that we have is option number one, is we can choose together to honor God. We can choose to have higher standards. We can choose to say, you know what? The rest of the world is doing this. The rest of the world may be having sex. They may be doing all of these other things. But you know, for us, for me and my house, we're going to have a different standard. And instead of doing like the rest of the world does, we are going to honor God together. That is the first option that we have when it comes to sex, is we can choose to honor God together. Option number two is we can choose not to honor God together. We can choose to sin together. Those are the two options that we have when it comes to relationship. And here's the deal. If you want the kind of relationship that everyone else has, then just do what everyone else does, right? Everyone in the world is having sex outside of marriage. If you want what everyone else in the world has, then do what everyone else in the world is doing, right? But if we want something different as followers of Jesus, if we want something more, if we want, look at the world today. Can we agree that we live in a pretty messed up world when it comes to relationships? I mean, I don't know if any of y'all have a Netflix subscription, but like you watch anything on Netflix about a family or about a relationship or about a couple, and I mean, it is crazy. We live in a crazy world when it comes to relationships. I mean, marital infidelity, adultery, it's all going on all around us. We see it constantly, and if we want what everyone else in the world has, then we do what everybody else in the world does. But if we as followers of Jesus want something more, if we want a relationship, a marriage that flourishes, then we got to be willing to do what maybe a lot of people aren't willing to do. And that means setting higher standards. Now, I'm going to be really honest with you guys today. Is that all right? Can I do that? I mean, I could be deceitful, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be honest with you guys today. Sarah and I, when we first met, we were not followers of Jesus, okay? And we totally went there, all right? We did not wait until we were married. We didn't. We weren't followers of Jesus. We did what people that don't follow Jesus do, okay? We just like everybody else did. And so, but what happened was we did come to faith in Christ. And after a while of being together and becoming followers of Jesus, we made a decision. We said, you know what? We are going to honor God. And the rest of the world may be doing this. All of our friends may be doing this. But we are going to honor God. We are going to set a higher standard. And we are going to wait until we are married to have sex again. And so we went for about a year. We were together for 3 years, somewhere around 3 years before we got married. We went about a year of abstinence, waiting until the wedding day. And I will tell you, it was only by the grace of God. It was hard, okay? It seemed like 5 years, right? But we went a year, about a year, before our wedding day. And I'll tell you, it was not just another day at the office when we got married. It was amazing. I mean, we were at the wedding. It was crazy. I was like, I didn't even eat cake at my own wedding. I was like, let's get out of here. I don't care. Like, let's get this thing done. We jumped in the car we had, which was a nice Porsche. It was a Porsche. It was really amazing. We jumped in that car. I might have raced a Corvette on the way to the hotel. I might have doubled the speed limit on the way to the hotel as I was driving down 59 in Houston all the way to downtown. And we went up into that hotel room, and I'll tell you, we said a prayer. We thanked God that we were married, and the rest is history, okay? It was amazing. And I want to say it's because we honored God together. And even though we weren't perfect when we got married, I'm absolutely convinced that part of the reason we have a great marriage and a great relationship today is because we made a decision that we were going to honor God together. Now, I want to just go ahead and break the kind of awkwardness that's probably in the room right now. And I shared that story today to encourage you guys, because it's not a lot of times you'll hear a preacher say that. In fact, I've never heard a preacher say that. Usually it's I was a virgin until I was 18. And if that's the case, fantastic. Like if you're here today and you're single and that's you, that's wonderful. But for most of us, that's not the case. And that wasn't the case for me. And I shared that story today so that I could hopefully encourage somebody that if you're here today and maybe you have gone there, you've already done that, you can't change the past. And nobody's here to beat you up for what you've done in the past. But what I want to do is share with you that there's hope, that you can, with God's help and with God's power, you can make a decision to set a higher standard and honor God together and say, you know what, the rest of the world may live their life this way, but as for us, we are going to honor God and we are going to set a higher standard. So that's the third quality that we look for in a potential spouse and that we seek to develop in ourselves if we are married is a higher standard. The fourth and final one is consistent encouragement. That's what we see here in this passage. We see that they are consistently encouraging one another. Look what the man says in verse 9. He says, I liken you, my darling, to a mare among Pharaoh's chariot horses. He calls her a female horse. Now, that's going to need a little bit of explanation. That's really a good thing. It's actually a good thing. But he says, your cheeks are beautiful like with earrings, your neck with strings of jewels. We will make you earrings of gold studded with silver. Again, a little context here. That horse, Pharaoh's chariot horses, I mean, they were thought of to be as the most majestic creatures in all of the kingdom. I mean, they were the most highly esteemed animals in all the kingdom. In fact, some people thought they were godlike. I mean, they were considered to be heavenly, spiritual beings. I mean, this is actually a really amazing compliment. He's saying, hey, girl, you think you're ugly? You think you have dark skin and nobody thinks you're attractive? Here's what I'm telling you. You are like the most prized and cherished possession in all of the kingdom. That's what he's saying. He's saying, I love you exactly as you are. I see past everything. I love you. I love everything about you. And he encourages her. He encourages her. And again, I want to say, if you're dating right now and the person you're with is just completely beating you down and not encouraging you, you need to get away. Because the person that you're with, if you want to spend a lifetime with this person, you should be growing in security and strength, building one another up in love and in the things of God. Now, if you didn't know this about Sarah, she, and I have her permission to use all these stories, most of them. She comes from a very wealthy family, all right? I don't, and so we got together, and, I was like, man, this woman is amazing. I want to spend the rest of my life with her. And soon after we got together, like I had this call to ministry and this call to be a pastor. And I knew that with that call to ministry, pretty much meant that we would never be rich. We were never going to be rich. We were never going to be wealthy, not because of my income anyway. And so I was like, man, I love this girl so much. I love her so much. I want to give her everything that she would ever desire, but I know that I never will be able to because I'm never going to be rich. I'm never going to be a wealthy man. And I remember saying that to her and saying, man, I love you, but I've got this calling on my life, and I don't know if it's, I'm not going to be able to provide you with everything that you're used to and everything that you've always wanted. And I remember opening up to her about that. And do you know what she told me? She said, Scott, I love you, and you have a calling on your life, and that means that we have a calling on our lives. And she said, I don't care where it takes us. I don't care. I would rather live in a tent with you and be serving God than live in a mansion with anybody else because I love you and we are both called of God. It's not just your calling, it's our calling. And when I opened up to her about that insecurity, she encouraged me so much, and I was like, oh, yes. I am marrying this woman. She is the woman for me because I opened up about this insecurity and she loved me through it anyway. And I knew this is the woman that I need to spend the rest of my life with. It doesn't matter where we go. We're going to be serving God even if we're living in a tent in some developing country. It won't matter because we will have our love and we will be serving God together. But I opened up and she encouraged me so much. She said exactly what I needed to hear. She told me that it wasn't about the wealth that I could bring her, but it was about us serving God together and loving God together. And I don't know how it'll play out with you and your relationship, but you want to have that consistent encouragement in whoever it is that you consider marrying. And this is how the man encourages her in verse 15. He says, "How beautiful you are, my darling. How beautiful. Your eyes are like doves." Then she responds and she says, "How handsome you are, my beloved." Now here's what's interesting. Here they're talking about physical attributes, right? They're talking about what makes them physically attracted to one another. That's what they're saying. But notice that they didn't start there. You see, a lot of times I think when we're talking about attraction and who we're attracted to, we go first to physical. That's the first thing. That's the most important thing. It's like do they look good? If they look good, then we can work everything else out. But what we're seeing here is that we're looking for these other qualities like character and high standards and all these other things. And then they start to talk about physical looks. Now, here's something that is just a truth that I've found in life. Is guys, you may not be the best looking dude, okay? You may not have the best looks, but here's what I found. If you love a woman, you serve a woman, you treat her like she deserves to be treated. You make her feel like the person that God designed her to be, the wonderful woman who she is. What I found is you may not be the best looking guy around, but you are going to start looking a whole lot better to her when you start treating her the way that God created her to be treated. There's just something powerful. That's my secret weapon. How do you think I got her to marry me? I mean, come on. That was my secret weapon. But notice how they begin with all of these other qualities before they start talking about the physical. Let's get back to the text. She says, "Let him lead me to the banquet hall. Let his banner over me be love. Strengthen me with raisins. Refresh me with apples, for I am faint with love. His left arm is under my head. His right arm embraces me." Now, I'm not sure what all of that means, but it sounds pretty awesome, I think, right? I mean, that sounds pretty awesome. There's godly character. There's growing trust. There's higher standards. There's consistent encouragement. This woman feels special. She feels safe. And because of that, she wants to give herself to her husband because all of those things are in place, all of the qualities of a healthy relationship. Here's my challenge for all of us today. If you're here today and you're already married, the call is to lay down your life for your spouse, to serve your spouse, to love your spouse the way that Jesus has laid down his life for us. Because the truth is that if we're followers of Jesus, we don't want what the rest of the world has, right? We want something more. We want a marriage that flourishes for the long haul. And if we want something different from what everyone has, then we've got to be willing to do what maybe everyone isn't willing to do. And if we do that, our marriages will be a testimony of the goodness of God, that he has loved us and sent his son Jesus to die for us, his church. And our marriage will represent that unconditional love. Amen? Let's stand. Those of you that are married, do you feel pumped up to be better spouses? Yeah. Those of you who are single, hopefully this was helpful in what to look for in a potential mate and what to cultivate in yourself. Father, I just pray today that by your Holy Spirit, you would come. And Lord, that you would move in our hearts this morning. Lord, for some of us, when we think about our past, our sexual past, there's a lot of hurt. There's a lot of brokenness. There's a lot of pain. And there's a lot of regret. And Lord, you are a God of mercy. You are a God of grace. And Lord, you're not a God who beats us over the head with our past mistakes, but you're a God who loves us and embraces us and gives us a future and a hope despite the mistakes we've made. And so, Lord, I just pray in the areas of our lives where we feel regret, where we feel like we've made mistakes, that you would come you would pour out your grace, that you would pour out your love, that you would pour out your forgiveness into our hearts. And let us know that we are loved by you. You are loved by God. We're going to have prayer teams on the sides of the room. We're going to sing one final song this morning. If you need prayer for anything at all, perhaps you're seeking wisdom, you need healing, whatever it is, I would encourage you to visit one of our prayer teams. They've been praying all week for you. Otherwise, we're going to sing this final song and then we'll close.